These are uncertain times in Baghdad. The bombing may have stopped, but life is still far from normal. 3 families once lived in this gaping hole in the ground. 14 people whose lives were extinguished in an instant.
All those people smell something like a dead body. And we are going to find this. I think it's a piece of my neighbor, young girl, age 20, Shams. I think it's the other part of her body. That's all.
This is the middle-class suburb of Al Mansour, the site of one American precision bomb that missed its target. The girl they think they're about to find is this man's niece.
From this place and from this place to this place. This is my house, sister house. And
he survived because he lives about a kilometre from here. His family's bodies were found scattered around the neighbourhood.
And the body of my son's sister, we found him in that place, in that door.
The enormous bomb was aimed at Saddam Hussein and his sons, who were reported to be eating in this restaurant just next door. But the bomb missed its target completely, and the restaurant remains open for business. But for the restaurant's neighbours, it will take a lot longer for life to get back to normal. Most of the people living in this area are professionals, doctors, chemists and teachers. Fadel is a former engineer, and this has been his home since he designed and built it in the 1960s. So these are your original drawings? You drew this?
Yes.
But now it looks like he may need to come out of retirement to begin the repair job.
I was sitting just in this seat.
My grandfather just sitting in this.
Fidel was relaxing before lunch when he was suddenly blown off his chair.
And a flow of dust and grass and coming from this area going to this side. I believe it was more than 15 or 20 seconds passing a continuous flow of air.
He was only slightly injured and called out through the dust to his daughter, but there was no answer.
لأنه التراب كان بحلقي وصدري بترس تراب وعيني ما قامت تشوف يعني مسد يعني مثل عاصفة وبقى صوت المحرك والعصف مستمر تقريبا نص دقيقة أو ربع دقيقة وبعدين بعد فترة ورا ما هدأت العاصفة قدرت أطلع وأشوف شو القصة وجاوبت.
His grandson was outside when he heard a noise overhead.
When I think one rocket, because I hear and I see it, like a long date palm and a yellow, and make a sound like an airplane came near to the earth, and a very, very big explosion without any fire.
The Americans had received intelligence that if Saddam was not in this restaurant, he was probably hiding in a house on what is now the other side of the crater. But like the restaurant, it's only slightly damaged. Across the road, Fidel's neighbour, Laith, never suspected that Saddam Hussein may have been his neighbour, until after the bombing, when he investigated more closely.
That house is for some VIP person or VVIP person, let's say. It's not an ordinary house, because if you enter in our house, what you see? Living room, bedrooms, kitchen and everything. But in that house, you don't see these things. You all see a presidential desk and a table for a meeting and some 2 beds or 3 beds. And you see five line of telephone.
Something else has been troubling Laith. There is still no groundwater in the bomb crater, while at his house they have water just below the surface.
If you compare the depth of this wall with that hole, this is nothing. Many people around here, they dig a well.
Yes.
Many people here, they all have waters.
These are strange times in Baghdad, and even a level-headed aircraft engineer like Laith is wondering just what's been going on in his neighbourhood. He seems almost embarrassed to confess his suspicion.
Maybe there is a tunnel underneath this. I'm not sure of that. Maybe a big, it must be a big one.
From the restaurant to his little house, maybe?
Maybe. Why there is a water in here and there is no water in here? I suspect there is some building underneath this. Let's say this, or there is a tunnel to somewhere prevent water to come in here. Let us see how big it is.
Saddam Hussein is rumoured to have constructed a network of tunnels under Baghdad, so maybe Laith's suspicion is not as strange as it sounds.
It's only a theory, I don't know whether it's right or wrong.
He can't put his mind to rest without asking at the restaurant. But there his tunnel theory is flatly rejected.
لكن صدام حسين يجي اللي هنا عمره ما اجى صدام حسين هنا ياخذون اكل الله اعلم جماعتهم ياخذون اكل ما ياخذون اكل.
But the waiters do admit that just before the bomb went off, a large takeaway order was placed for 100 shawarmas.
هم ناس تجي ناس كلها مسلحه هاي ياخذون اكل ويروحون.
ناس عسكريين ما يقدرون
خاصه فتره الحرب يعني.
The middle-class residents of Al-Mansur benefited from Saddam Hussein's secular rule. It's no surprise then that facing such uncertain times, many of them are already pining for a return to strong leadership.
Saddam Hussein, he was a good leader. There is no one say another that except Bush. He lead us very well. We need a very strong leader like Saddam Hussein, but with a democratic
And humane.
Human, if you say so, yes.
Well, do you not say so?
Well, we need the humanity, yes, we need it.
But for now, it's the Americans who are running Iraq, and they're firmly in control, at least in this part of the city. I'm trying to get across town to the Shi'ite stronghold of Sadr City, normally about half an hour's drive from Al-Mansur. But with Baghdad's infrastructure in ruins and American roadblocks everywhere, progress is painfully slow. Each car is searched for weapons and ammunition.
Where you get this from?
This for you. This for we buy fooding to eat. This وزع الفلوس. No.
No problem. Hey, tell him we put his money back.
Hey, this for
But we keep his ammo.
this هاي
No problem.
يلا no problem. عندي في البيت.
بس ليش تشيل
ممنوع. ناسيها والله.
Hey, cameraman, you got that money going in the comb tape now, right?
This is as far as the American soldiers are stationed. Sadr City, where I'm headed, is a no-go area for the troops. Sadr City is an enormous area in the north of Baghdad. It's populated by Shiite immigrants from the south, with traditional links to Iran. The Shiites themselves have renamed it Sadr City, after a Shiite cleric murdered, so the story goes, by Saddam Hussein himself. The former president treated the Shiite majority harshly, and now that he's gone and they're free to practice their religion without suppression, the mood is euphoric.
ونسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى اللي نتكاتف ونظل متكاتفين
إن شاء الله.
بفضل حوزتنا وبفضل علمائنا وبفضل تكاتفنا.
This is Sheik Saeed, a man of growing influence in Sadr City. With the Americans staying away from here, he's the closest you get to a government official. But his first allegiance will always be to the Shi'ite leadership in the south.
واكو مثلا عندنا راح يصير اجتماعات، راح يصير مؤتمرات من باسم المرجعيه الدينيه، وراح يصير عندنا مسيرات. فاحنا شلون يعني نريد تأييدكم ويا المسيرات ويا المؤتمرات ويا الاجتماعات في سبيل بناء قدره كامله للمرجعيه الدينيه في النجف الاشراف.
For Iraqi Shiites, these are exciting times, a chance for a downtrodden, poverty-stricken people to assert their influence in the new Iraq. For Sheik Saeed, that future is a religious government.
الشعب العراقي بأجمعه لا يثق إلا برجل الدين. فعندما سارعنا نحن لأننا نعلم بأن الشعب يثق بنا ونخصبنا أنفسنا للحفاظ على الأمن والسلامة في المنطقة.
Saeed's followers are now in control of every aspect of life in Sadr City. At this intersection, men from his mosque are controlling increasingly chaotic traffic flow. They have also taken it upon themselves to run the hospitals and clinics in this area. But the best gauge of their influence on the community is their success in convincing looters to return much of what they took in the first few days after the fall of Baghdad.
هذا كله يعني احنا محاوطين كإدارة كاملة. هذه إدارة العمل المكتب هنا، يعني إدارة الصادر والوارد والخارج، يعني المواد اللي قاعد تدخل واللي قاعد تخرج.
Saeed admits that his followers looted a lot of these goods themselves. He explains that it was a preemptive move to keep things safe from other opportunist looters. He says a lot of what they took from government storage facilities proved the disregard that Saddam Hussein showed for his people's welfare. These biscuits, for example, donated by UNICEF, had passed their expiry dates.
كل دعايات كذب. هذا البسكت كما ترون يحتجزه صدام حسين، ما أعرف، احتمال للسمك ماله ما أعرف إلمه.
The Americans are not even bothering to patrol Sadr City. It's a political minefield now that the Shiites are running the show. Instead, they're happy to allow these natural enemies of Saddam Hussein to handle security on their own.
هنالك 3 أشخاص مستعدين إلى الواجب، وهنالك 4 أشخاص أيضا مستعدين إلى القيام بالواجب، وهنالك في ذلك المكان الذي يوجد 4 أشخاص أيضا في ذلك الواجب، ومنتشرين على كل المدينة منتشرين على هذا الموضوع.
All of these men are armed, and they are still engaging almost every night in battles with the remnants of the Fedayeen Saddam, those mercenary supporters of the former leader.
يعني طبوا بالمنطقة جو البارحة بالليل بسيارة كوريلا بيضة ونزلوا واحد، فالواحد جبناه من اليوم، اعترف قال احنا فدائيين صدام.
الحمد لله لقد مسكنا من الفدائيين كثير، وقد أسقطنا عدة مواجهات من قبلهم الذين يسمون بزمر صدام وأبدناهم.
Shiite militias are cleaning up where the Americans left off. I was shown into a room at the back of Saeed's mosque which held 6 prisoners of war, 3 Iraqi Fedayeen and 3 jihadis from Syria and Jordan. Saeed would not let me film them, but the men I saw were frightened and had been severely beaten. The Shiites are clearly dishing out a very tough justice.
فمن قتل فسوف يقتل، ومن لم يقتل سوف يتحاسب، ونحن الآن نتعامل معهم كما رأيتم تعامل يعني أخوي، تعامل وكأن تعامل إسلامي، فسوف يذهبون إلى جهات مختصة.
The relevant authorities are the religious leaders in the holy Shiite city of Najaf. Saeed says that they would never hand their prisoners to the Americans. They fear that they would not get a proper Muslim trial, or could even be sent to Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, like the POWs from Afghanistan. And although they are indebted to the Americans for ridding Iraq of the tyrant Saddam Hussein, the welcome doesn't extend beyond that.
ولكن لن نحترم الجيش الأمريكي كمستحل، نحترمه كمحرر، لكن إذا كان الجيش الأمريكي مستحل سوف يجد هنالك القتال العراقي الأصيل بالدفاع عن هذا الوطن.
Middle-class Al-Mansur, however, is a different world.
تقول بتوديني هسه؟
شلون؟
توديني هسه؟
اي شويه.
Here people of all religious persuasions live side by side, Sunnis, Shiites and Christians coexisting happily. Fidel and his family are Sunni, as is Laith, but their young neighbours and grandma are Shiite. Since the bombing, these families have become even closer.
أنا ولدي حجي أصدق كذب.
The Americans are aware that a prolonged occupation will make them the enemies of all Iraqis. While Sunni Muslims like Fidel may feel safer with them here, the Shiites are getting restless.
لأننا نعلم أمريكا وماذا سوف تفعل أمريكا، سوف تدس فينا العار وسوف تدس فينا المسائل اللا إخلاقية، لأنه هذا شعار أمريكا في الحقيقة.
Sheik Saeed is willing to give the Americans a little time until things settle down, but then they must leave or else.
فنحن سوف تجدني أنا سوف أتقدم وسوف أقدم أطفالي الصغار، سوف ألغمهم وأضعهم في داخل القوات الأمريكية وأفجرهم إذا لم يخرجوا، وإن خرجوا.
Not everyone shares that conviction. For Laith's family back in Al-Mansur, there are some positives that have come from the American occupation. For the first time, they can admit publicly that they have a relative in America. With my satellite phone, Laith calls his brother in New York.
منو حقي؟ ألو، شلونك حقي؟ أقول لك حقي هاي شلونك أنت زين؟ حقي إيه هاي أمي تحكي وياك.
Under Saddam Hussein's rule, Iraqis with family abroad were viewed with suspicion. That is no longer an issue.
إن شاء الله هذا فراس يحكي وياك. إيه.
بس صادق تتذكره. صديق ابوي الله يرحمه، هي البيت والبيت اللي يمه ماكو لها وجود. ثلاث بيوت. يعني ثلاث تبخرت يعني هي والناس والاساس. هي الناس متبخروا. احنا الله
But the miracle of their survival has given way to a new reality. Trying to rebuild devastated lives, while out on the street, it's every man for himself. The onslaught of looters is just one of many problems confronting them day to day.
جدو هذا البارحة كان موجود بالشباك. هذا اللي قدامك فلش الطابور. ها؟ هو هذا الولد نفسه كان جاي البارحة. This is a criminal. This is هو راح يرجع للشباك هسه.
With such insecurity the order of the day, even Fidel's school-age grandson finds it necessary to carry a gun. You've got one too. Where have you had this in your pocket the whole time?
Yeah, this is a personal pistol for me. So
that's the first time I've seen that. So you've been carrying this around the whole time?
Yeah, must be.
Why is that?
To be staying alive.
Self-defense.
Because the American soldiers didn't give me some protection.
Life here has been completely turned on its head. All that was familiar has now gone. For Laith, any sense of normality is still a long way away.
I need shelter for my mother, my brother, and his son and his wife.
You also need a new government, you need to sort out the Kurdistan
Yes,
problem.
sure, I need all these things. I need a new government, I need peace. I don't like to live with this all bombing and thieves, robberies. It's not good for us, it's not an ordinary life.